You know, there is this really pervasive, almost comforting myth that we tell ourselves about predators and their prey.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like we tend to picture the classic wildlife documentary scene, right?
Right, the lion on the savannah.
Exactly. The lion singling out the weakest, like the slowest gazelle at the back of the herd. And we just sort of assume that psychological predators operate the exact same way.
We do, we really do.
We think they look for the fragile, the broken, the people with um, zero self-esteem who are just desperate for any kind of attention. But when you actually step into the world of behavioral psychology, specifically regarding how a narcissist chooses a partner, that documentary script just gets entirely flipped on its head.
It absolutely does, and, the reality is far more unsettling than the myth.
Yeah.
Because that assumption that predators only seek out the weak, it gives this false sense of security to people who consider themselves strong.
Right, and that's exactly what blew my mind in the research we're unpacking today. According to the clinical data, narcissists do not hunt for weak people.
No, they don't.
They actively, deliberately hunt for the strongest, highly empathetic, and incredibly intelligent people they can find.
Exactly.
If you are smart, capable, and you possess a deep well of compassion for others, you aren't shielded from a narcissist.
Yeah.
You are like their preferred target.
You're the prime demographic.
You are the exact demographic they're looking to exploit.
Which is completely counterintuitive to how we normally think about emotional resilience, right?
Totally.
We equate intelligence and empathy with, well, with psychological armor. We think, I'm smart, I can see through people, I'm empathetic, I can build healthy connections.
Yeah, you think you're safe.
But to a pathological narcissist, your empathy isn't a shield at all. It's a massive, glaring vulnerability.
Yeah.
It is the exact handle they use to pry your boundaries open. Because, they need someone who is willing to give endless benefit of the doubt.
Right.
And intelligent, empathetic people are remarkably good at rationalizing other people's bad behavior.
Okay, and that dynamic is exactly what we are exploring in today's deep dive.
Mm.
We are looking at the behavioral mechanics of narcissism, and we're drawing extensively from Thomas Erikson's incredibly eye-opening book, Surrounded by Narcissists.
Such an important resource right now.
It really is. And our mission for you, the listener, is to basically arm you with these psychological tools to identify the very subtle, very dangerous red flags of narcissism.
It's because they are subtle at first.
Very subtle. We are going to map out the complete timeline, like the before and after reality of getting entangled in a relationship with one of these individuals. And we'll specifically examine how they manipulate reality.
Crucially, though, I think we also need to draw a hard line between what is just, everyday selfishness and what is actual clinical pathological narcissism.
Right.
Because those terms get thrown around so much in our culture today.
They really do.
And blurring that line is actually quite dangerous.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Because I think we've all had that moment where a coworker talks over us in a meeting, or a friend takes one too many selfies.
Right.
Or an ex behaves badly during a breakup.
Right.
And we immediately just mutter, oh, what a narcissist.
Oh, everybody says it.
We use it as this casual insult for anyone acting a bit self-centered. But clinical narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is a completely different, much darker beast than just having a big ego.
You're absolutely right to be enthusiastic about that distinction because it's the most common trap people fall into. It's easy to label a bad date a narcissist.
Oh, sure.
But clinical psychology points out that true narcissistic personality disorder occurs in only about, 1 to 2% of the population.
That's it, just 1 to 2%.
Just 1 to 2%. It's a rigid, pervasive pattern of grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a total lack of empathy. And this begins by early adulthood and is present in a variety of contexts.
Okay.
However, while clinical NPD is rare, narcissistic traits are undeniably becoming a new cultural normal.
Okay. We are living in a society that often rewards self-promotion, entitlement, and superficial charm. So even if you aren't dealing with that top 1% of clinical diagnoses, you are absolutely navigating a world heavily populated by individuals exhibiting these toxic traits. So before we can understand how they dismantle a relationship, or how a listener can spot one in the wild, we have to look under the hood.
We do.
We need to define the beast and understand what is fundamentally broken in their psychological hardware. And Erikson takes a really interesting angle here.
He does.
We all know the ancient Greek myth of Narcissus staring at his own reflection in the water, right?
Right, the classic origin story.
But what struck me reading Erikson's take on this, which I think most people completely miss, is that the core tragedy of that myth wasn't actually his self-love.
No, it wasn't.
It was his starvation.
Yes. The starvation aspect is the entire key to understanding the pathology. Narcissus was so utterly captivated by himself that he refused to leave his reflection, and he ultimately starved to death. But he didn't just passively forget to eat.
Right, he actively pushed people away.
Exactly. He actively rejected the nymph Echo and anyone else who tried to offer him connection or sustenance.
He died because the reflection couldn't feed him.
Precisely.
And his grandiosity prevented him from accepting sustenance from anyone else. And that translates directly to the core traits Erikson outlines for modern narcissism.
It's a perfect parallel.
We're talking about an unrealistic, grandiose self-image, coupled with an incredible, black hole level of self-centeredness.
Yes.
This unshakable belief that they are fundamentally unique and special, and above all, a profound, chilling lack of empathy. They reject the reality of other people.
And that lack of empathy is the linchpin of the entire disorder. A narcissist essentially operates under the assumption that other people are not fully real. Well, not in the way they are. Other people exist merely as props, like mirrors or stepping stones to be exploited for the narcissist's own benefit.
Wow.
They believe they are inherently entitled to the best of whatever life has to offer. And if someone else has to suffer for them to get it, that doesn't even register as a moral dilemma.
Because they just don't care.
Exactly. The machinery for guilt simply isn't there.
But this brings up something that always confuses people, and it's a huge cultural myth we need to bust right now.
Let's do it.
We hear all the time that bullies, or intensely arrogant people, are actually just deeply insecure.
Yes.
Yeah.
The overcompensation myth.
Right. We're taught from childhood that the kid acting like a tyrant on the playground actually hates himself deep down, and the arrogance is just a mask for his low self-esteem.
Right.
But Erikson points out a paradox here when it comes to self-esteem versus pathological narcissism that completely shatters that idea.
It really is one of the most persistent and dangerous myths we hold on to, because it makes us feel sympathy for abusers.
Right. We want to fix them.
People desperately want to believe that grandiose narcissists, the loud, boastful, extroverted ones who step all over everyone, are just overcompensating for profound internal misery.
But they aren't.
No, the clinical data tells a terrifyingly different story. To prove this, Erikson highlights a fascinating psychological measuring tool called the implicit association test, or IAT.
I found the mechanics of this test so compelling because it's practically impossible to fake.
Exactly.
You can't just lie your way through it like a standard personality quiz on the internet.
Precisely. Because explicit self-esteem is what you tell a researcher on a questionnaire.
Right.
If I hand you a piece of paper that asks, are you a highly capable person? You can consciously choose to check yes to look good.
Anyone can lie on that.
Anyone. But the IAT measures implicit self-esteem by tracking your subconscious reaction times measured in milliseconds.
Right.
You sit at a computer, and you have to rapidly categorize words as they flash on the screen, pairing words related to self or other with words that are positive or negative.
Right. So it bypasses the conscious filter entirely.
Completely.
You literally don't have time to think about how you should answer. Your brain just reacts based on its deepest hardwired associations.
Exactly. And when researchers run grandiose narcissists through this test, the results are staggering.
Tell them what they found.
Well, deep down, at a subconscious level that they cannot manipulate, they do not feel miserable or insecure.
At all.
At all. Deep down, they truly believe their own hype. Their reaction times show an incredibly strong, effortless association between themselves and positive attributes.
Like they tested words like good, wonderful, brilliant, and the narcissists clicked them instantly.
Without a second thought.
Their brains didn't even hesitate to associate their own identity with absolute greatness.
Yes. They also showed lightning-fast association with words like active, energetic, outspoken, and dominant.
Okay, so they love themselves.
They really do.
Yeah.
But here is where the critical divergence happens. And this is how you separate healthy self-esteem from pathological narcissism.
Right. This is the key.
When the test introduced words like kind, friendly, generous, cooperative, or affectionate, the narcissists stumbled.
Wow.
Their reaction time slowed down significantly. They completely failed to strongly associate themselves with pro-social, empathetic terms.
Yet it's such a revealing piece of data. Because healthy self-esteem is like a rising tide that lifts all boats.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah, like if you genuinely like yourself and feel secure in your own worth, you have the emotional bandwidth to look around, see the bigger picture, and help others feel good too.
Right.
You easily associate yourself with being kind and cooperative because your ego isn't threatened by someone else's existence or success.
That's a phenomenal way to frame it. Healthy self-esteem includes moral agency. It includes ethical decision-making and a genuine concern for the community.
Yeah.
Pathological narcissism, however, is a highly cohesive self-image of absolute superiority that strictly, systematically excludes caring for others.
Right.
It is not an excess of self-respect. It is a total structural deficit of respect for anyone else.
So, if healthy self-esteem is a rising tide, pathological narcissism is like a black hole.
Exactly.
It has this immense crushing gravity,
Yeah.
and it draws everything toward itself, but it only consumes light. It never gives any off.
Never.
It just pulls and pulls until there's nothing left.
And understanding that black hole nature is exactly why treating a narcissist like someone with low self-esteem is so disastrously dangerous.
Oh, man, yeah. Let's talk about the HR story.
Right. Erikson shares a chilling real-world example of this from a large company he worked with. There was a blatant workplace bully in his department, a classic grandiose narcissist making his colleagues miserable.
Just a terror to work with.
Absolutely. And instead of firing him or disciplining him, the HR department fell for the playground myth.
Unbelievable.
They decided the bully must be insecure and going through a difficult time, so they offered him specialized therapy and self-esteem training,
Wow.
effectively telling the victims to just overlook his abuse while he, quote-unquote, healed.
So setting a narcissistic workplace bully to self-esteem training is quite literally the worst possible intervention.
The absolute worst.
You are just validating their delusion.
It is pouring high-octane gasoline on a fire. If you take an individual who already lacks empathy, who already fundamentally believes they are superior to everyone else,
Right.
and you put them in a corporate program designed to make them value themselves even more, you are just upgrading their weaponry.
Yeah, you're giving them permission.
You are validating their core toxic belief that their internal feelings matter more than the external damage they are inflicting on others. They walk out of that training thinking, you know, HR is right. I am special.
Right.
And these complaints from my coworkers just prove that my inferiors are jealous of my brilliance.
Okay, so that establishes a very dark baseline. We're dealing with an individual who genuinely believes they are a superior being, who lacks the psychological hardware for empathy,
Correct.
and who views other people strictly as disposable resources. That is terrifying.
Really is.
But here is the logical gap we have to cross. If their internal architecture is a black hole that strictly excludes pro-social feelings, how do they bridge the gap to actually get a partner?
Right. How do they trap you?
Because nobody walks up to a black hole on purpose.
Yeah.
Why don't we all just run away screaming the moment we meet them? This leads us directly into the before phase, the seduction and the empathy trap.
Well, the seduction phase relies on the fact that narcissists don't lead with cruelty.
Right.
If they did, their strategy would fail immediately. Instead, they lead with an overwhelming, intoxicating wave of validation.
The love bombing.
Yes, this is commonly known in behavioral circles as the love bombing phase, and it is a masterclass in psychological manipulation.
The love bombing phase is wild because it looks exactly like the whirlwind romance we are taught to desire by movies and pop culture.
It plays right into our fantasies.
Exactly. Erikson points out that within 3 weeks of meeting you, the narcissist might look you dead in the eye over a dinner that you are probably paying for, by the way, and announce that you are their absolute soulmate.
And for the victim, especially if they have been craving deep connection or have recently gone through a vulnerable period, it feels like a fairy tale manifesting in real life.
It's everything you've ever wanted.
The narcissist showers them with false promises, grand visions of an intertwined future, flowers, extreme flattery. They put you on an impossibly high pedestal.
Right.
They tell you that you are the most exceptional person they have ever met, that nobody has ever understood them the way you do, and that you are the only one who truly gets them.
But this goes back to our opening hook. They aren't just blindly throwing this charm at anyone walking down the street.
No, not at all.
They are actively profiling. They are looking for highly empathetic people. Because an empathetic person is inherently programmed to give others the benefit of the doubt.
Yep.
Like if an empathetic person sees someone acting a little too intensely, moving a little too fast, they might think, oh, they're just really passionate. Or maybe they've been hurt before and they're just eager for real, authentic love.
We make excuses for them.
Right, we project our own good intentions onto them.
And that projection is the fatal flaw the narcissist relies on. You have to realize that the love bombing phase is not a romance at all.
No.
It is a highly calculated reconnaissance mission.
A reconnaissance mission. That's so creepy.
It is. During this initial stage, the narcissist isn't just blindly praising you, they are studying you with intense focus.
Right.
They will often share fabricated, highly dramatic secrets about their own past, tales of being misunderstood by terrible exes, betrayed by family, or unfairly victimized by former bosses.
Oh, wait. They are doing that to trigger your empathy.
Precisely. They manufacture artificial vulnerability to elicit genuine vulnerability from you.
Oh, that is sinister.
They want you to open up. They want you to share your actual traumas, your deep-seated fears, your insecurities, and your core values. If you confide that you have a deep fear of financial instability from your childhood, they file that away.
Like keeping a dossier.
Yes. If you admit you are insecure about your physical appearance or your intelligence, they take a mental note. They are actively gathering ammunition.
You know, the analogy that screams out to me here is a computer hacker.
Oh, that's a good one.
When a sophisticated hacker wants to infiltrate a secure network, they don't just smash the server with a hammer.
Right.
They run a background program that pings the entire system, methodically scanning for open ports, outdated software, and unpatched vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
That is exactly what love bombing is.
Yeah.
They aren't just complimenting you. They are pinging your psychological system.
Yes.
They want to map the architecture of your emotional network so they know exactly what your triggers are, allowing them to completely weaponize those vulnerabilities later.
That hacker analogy is spot on. And this is exactly why intelligence does not protect you from being hacked. In fact, Erikson points out that high intelligence can actually make you more vulnerable to a narcissist's infiltration.
Which seems so incredibly backwards. You'd think a smart, analytical person would see right through the lies and the exaggerated flattery.
You would think so. But highly intelligent people rely heavily on logic, rationality, and cause and effect reasoning.
Okay.
When the love bombing phase ends and the narcissist later begins to act in bizarre, contradictory, or subtly cruel ways, the highly intelligent victim doesn't immediately assume this person is a predator with no moral compass.
Right, because that doesn't make sense to them.
It defies logic.
Yeah.
Instead, their intelligent brain goes into overdrive trying to solve the puzzle.
Ah.
They assume there must be a logical explanation for this behavior. If I can just understand their perspective, if I can just communicate my feelings more clearly, we can fix this.
So they try to engineer a solution.
Exactly. The victim uses their own formidable intelligence to build massive, complex rationalizations for the narcissist's irrational abuse.
You literally outsmart yourself into staying in the trap.
You do.
You project your own rationality onto someone who is operating on a completely different, purely exploitative operating system.
Huh?
You think you're playing chess, and they're just setting the board on fire.
Yes. And if any listeners are sitting there thinking, well, I'm too smart to fall for that, the source material provides some staggering real-world examples that prove no one is immune.
The David Hare story.
Yes, look at the anecdote about David Hare. David Hare is a world-renowned psychologist. He literally developed the psychopsy checklist, which is the gold standard diagnostic tool used worldwide to identify psychopaths and extreme narcissists.
Right.
He has spent his entire life studying the darkest facets of human manipulation, and yet he admitted to being completely duped by a manipulative psychopath he had personally diagnosed in a prison setting.
I mean, the guy who wrote the test was fooled by the guy taking the test.
Exactly. Hare knew the prisoner's diagnosis, he knew the clinical markers, but the manipulator was so skilled at mirroring, at sounding perfectly reasonable, reformed, and genuinely misunderstood, that he bypassed Hare's intellectual defenses and hacked his empathy.
That's wild. Erikson also mentions another incredible anecdote about a senior researcher in the field.
Oh, with the car.
Yes. He lent his Mercedes to a narcissist who had just been released from prison. The researcher thought they'd formed a genuine rehabilitative bond.
Right.
Naturally, the narcissist drove off and the researcher never saw his car again.
Never saw it again.
These are top-tier experts in human behavior, people who write the textbooks on manipulation, and even they fall for it. It just goes to show that when a skilled manipulator locates your specific empathetic blind spot, your IQ score becomes completely irrelevant.
It becomes irrelevant because they aren't engaging your intellect. They are hacking your emotional hard drive.
Right.
And once they have successfully downloaded all your vulnerabilities, once they have secured your attachment and isolated you from your support network by convincing you that only they truly understand you,
Yeah.
that is when the dynamic violently shifts. The reconnaissance mission is over. The open ports have been breached. The trap snaps shut. and we transition into the during phase.
Okay, so they've hacked the system. They've downloaded all your insecurities. What happens the morning after the reconnaissance mission ends?
The mask slips.
The mask comes off and the psychological whiplash begins. Because once the narcissist knows they have you locked in, that impossibly high pedestal they put you on is violently kicked away.
Boom! You hit the floor.
Erikson describes the active relationship as a constant, suffocating state of profound disappointment. Suddenly, absolutely nothing the partner does is good enough.
And that whiplash is designed to keep you disoriented. The person who 3 weeks ago called you their perfect soulmate is now meticulously picking apart every single aspect of your existence.
Everything is a problem.
You don't make enough money, your education is suddenly inadequate, your looks are fading, the way you chew your food is infuriating, your friends are annoying losers.
Wow.
The goalposts for their approval are put on wheels and constantly moved away from you. You can never win.
He uses this visceral metaphor in the text of the partner becoming a punching bag in the basement.
It's very accurate.
Because the narcissist is walking around carrying all this imagined baggage. Fantasies of the massive wealth they naturally deserve, the fame they were unfairly denied by a corrupt system, the perfect, frictionless life they should be living.
Right.
And whenever reality inevitably falls short of their grandiose delusions, which it always does, they need someone to blame.
Because they can't blame themselves.
Exactly. Their ego structure won't allow it. So they walk down to the basement, metaphorically speaking, and pummel the punching bag. You become the receptacle for all their projected failures.
And they keep you in that basement, willingly taking the punches, through a highly sophisticated toolkit of manipulation tactics.
Right.
They don't just yell. They systematically dismantle your sense of reality. This is where gaslighting becomes their primary daily weapon.
Let's talk about gaslighting.
Gaslighting isn't just lying. It is a sustained campaign designed to get the victim entirely off balance, making them doubt their own memory, their own perception, and eventually their own sanity.
Let's break down the actual mechanics of this manipulation, because Erikson highlights a tactic called changing the subject that is just diabolical in its execution.
It really is.
Let's say you find undeniable empirical evidence that your narcissistic partner is cheating on you. You find a shirt with lipstick on the collar in their car, or you see a highly explicit text message pop up on their phone screen.
Right.
You confront them. A normal person caught in a betrayal would feel intense shame.
Yeah.
They might panic and deny it, or they might break down and confess. What does the narcissist do?
The narcissist executes a flawless, aggressive conversational pivot.
A pivot.
They do not address the cheating. They don't even defend against it. Instead, they instantly attack you for the method you used to obtain the evidence.
That is so messed up.
They will look at you with total righteous indignation and say, "How dare you snoop in my car?
Wow.
How dare you look at my phone screen? You clearly have massive unresolved trust issues. You are paranoid, invasive, and controlling." Honestly, no wonder this relationship is struggling, considering how untrusting and toxic your behavior is.
It's a total Jedi mind trick. The sheer audacity of it shorts out your brain.
Exactly.
Suddenly you find yourself on the defensive. You find yourself actually apologizing for snooping, while the fact that they're actively committing infidelity is completely swept under the rug.
Swept right under the rug.
The focus has been entirely shifted to your supposed moral failing, and they get to play the victim of your paranoia.
And this tactic is heavily layered with others to ensure you stay confused. They use minimization, like, "Oh, everyone flirts, you're making a massive deal out of nothing, you're so dramatic." They use condescension. "You really shouldn't be feeling this way, you're just overly sensitive. Maybe you need to see a therapist about your jealousy."
Classic projection.
And perhaps the most disorienting weapon of all, vacuous statements.
The empty "I love you."
Precisely. In the middle of this horrific psychological abuse, after tearing down your self-worth and gaslighting your reality, they will look at you with dead eyes and say, "But I love you so much."
Oh, that makes my skin crawl.
To a normal, empathetic person, the phrase "I love you" carries immense weight. It signifies commitment, care, sacrifice, and safety.
It means something.
To a narcissist, it puts zero weight on the scale. It is merely a sound they make with their mouths because they know it is the correct sequence of syllables to momentarily pacify you.
Just pushing a button.
It means nothing because, as we established with the IAT test, they are biologically and psychologically incapable of actual love.
Go wait, I have to push back here because this is the contradiction that always trips me up and I think trips up a lot of victims. We spent the whole first segment establishing that they have absolutely zero empathy. They cannot feel what we feel. Their internal world is a black hole.
Right.
So if they're emotionally blind, how are they so surgically precise at pushing our emotional buttons? How can you be a master manipulator of human emotion if you don't actually experience it?
That is the core paradox of the narcissist, and the answer is truly chilling.
Okay.
Erikson addresses this exact contradiction. Narcissists don't feel the emotion, but they study it. Imagine a cold, clinical scientist observing a rat in a maze. The scientist doesn't feel the rat's hunger, and they don't feel the rat's fear, but they know exactly which lever the rat will pull to get the cheese.
Right.
And they know exactly which floor tile delivers the electric shock.
Wow. So they are observing us without the interference of actually caring about us.
Exactly. Empathy actually muddies the waters of manipulation.
That makes sense.
If you feel someone else's pain, your conscience makes you hesitate to hurt them. You hold back. The narcissist has no conscience, so they have no hesitation.
None at all.
They have studied human reactions clinically their entire lives. They know that if they push the jealousy button, they get a specific, predictable reaction.
Right.
If they push the abandonment fear button they discovered during the love bombing phase, they know you will panic and cling to them. They mimic human emotions perfectly to achieve control without ever internalizing the feeling.
That is deeply, deeply unsettling. It's like living with a very advanced AI that has learned to simulate human bonding for the sole purpose of extracting resources.
That is a very accurate description.
And the toll this takes on the victim brings us to the after phase, the psychological devastation.
Yes.
Erikson says that if you stay in this environment, you are slowly diluted into a pale replica of your former self. You become a shadow.
A shell of who you were.
You live in a state of chronic anxiety, constantly walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate the next explosive rage or the next punishing silent treatment. Your entire nervous system is fried.
The victim loses their identity entirely because their entire existence, their thoughts, and their actions have been systematically rewired to serve as a mirror and a shock absorber for the narcissist's fragile ego.
It's just devastating.
It is. So the most critical part of this deep dive, the actionable takeaway for you, the listener, is how do you survive this? How do you break free from a system designed to keep you trapped?
And Erikson does not mince words here. You cannot passively hope things get better. You cannot love them into changing.
Never.
He introduces a concept from his behavioral color system that he calls Act Red.
Right, the color system.
In his previous books, the red personality type represents direct, forceful, unapologetic action. When dealing with a narcissist, you cannot be passive, and you cannot be overly diplomatic.
You can't.
You have to let your true emotions out and react forcefully and quickly the moment they cross a boundary.
And to effectively break a narcissist's script, you have to use their one glaring vulnerability against them, their
Right.
public image.
Right.
Narcissists are desperately, obsessively concerned with how the outside world perceives their grandiosity. They need to be seen as perfect, charming, and successful. So Erikson advises that if you are going to call out their manipulation, do it directly, and if at all possible, do it publicly.
Yes. Going back to the cheating example with a conversational pivot, when they try to pivot the argument to, why were you snooping, you do not take the bait.
Don't bite.
You stand your ground, you anchor yourself to reality, and you say, we can discuss my snooping later if you want. Right now, I am more interested to know why there is lipstick on your collar.
Keep it on the facts.
You refuse to let them change the subject. Or better yet, you bring it up in front of a trusted friend or family member.
That public element changes everything. If they start verbally abusing you and you say, please stop shouting at me in the middle of a crowded restaurant, the narcissist is instantly trapped.
Because they can't throw a tantrum.
Right. They cannot unleash their rage and maintain their victim narrative without destroying their carefully crafted public mask in front of strangers.
Everyone will see the crazy.
Exactly. When outsiders can see the bad behavior, the entire dynamic shifts. They lose their power in the light of public scrutiny because they cannot control everyone's perception at once.
But let's be realistic. Sometimes you can't have a dramatic public confrontation. Sometimes the narcissist is a family member, a parent, or an in-law that you can't entirely escape or cut out of your life cleanly.
Right, that happens a lot.
And there's an anecdote in the text about an ant that I think perfectly illustrates the ultimate everyday countermeasure. I was so struck by this story because it perfectly captures how intensely petty and cruel this pathology gets on a mundane level.
Yes, that anecdote perfectly encapsulates everyday, banal narcissism. It's not always grand cinematic abuse. Sometimes it's just relentless, suffocating control.
Yeah.
Erikson describes a distant relative's aunt. She is a profoundly toxic woman, deeply unpleasant, always playing the victim of some grand, imaginary conspiracy that is holding her back in life. Nothing is ever her fault. But the most revealing, heartbreaking detail is how she treats her husband. He is visually impaired, functionally blind, and his absolute greatest pleasure in his limited life is sitting in his chair and listening to audiobooks.
And she forbids him from doing it.
She won't let him use his CD player. And her reasoning is what makes it so textbook. She claims she doesn't like having cords littering the floor.
It's breathtakingly cruel.
Huh?
Her minor, incredibly petty aesthetic preference for a cord-free floor completely trumps her blind husband's primary source of joy and engagement with the world.
Yes.
She would rather he sit in silent darkness than suffer the mild inconvenience of looking at a wire. That is the complete lack of empathy in action.
Perfectly stated.
It's not that she hates audiobooks, it's that his happiness doesn't even register as a variable in her decision-making process.
It doesn't even cross her mind.
So how does Erikson's relative deal with this aunt at family gatherings?
Through the rigorous implementation of absolute distance and total apathy. He doesn't try to argue with her. He doesn't try to show her how cruel she is being to her husband because he knows she fundamentally lacks the hardware to care.
Right.
Trying to induce guilt in her is a waste of breath, so instead he limits contact. When he is forced to interact with her, he gives brief, unenthusiastic, one-word answers. He is polite, but utterly uninviting. He gives her absolutely nothing to work with.
Because apathy is the narcissist's true kryptonite.
Exactly. Narcissists feed on reaction. Emotional reaction is their primary food source, often called narcissistic supply.
Narcissistic supply, okay.
They actually prefer your anger, your tears, and your hatred over your apathy, because even your hatred proves that they have power over you.
Wow.
If you are screaming at them, it proves they exist, they are significant, and they can impact your reality. But if you give them nothing, no anger, no tears, no dramatic engagement, you become a useless, broken mirror. They can't see their grandiosity reflected in a blank stare.
So, what does this all mean for you if you might be dealing with a narcissist right now? It means the ultimate survival strategy is to become the most boring, unreactive person in the world to them.
The gray rock method.
Yes, the gray rock method in psychology. You become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a gray rock on the ground.
Right.
You starve them of the emotional drama they desperately crave, so they eventually get bored, realize the well is dry, and move on to hunt another target.
And we have to address the tragic truth about why the gray rock method or complete no contact is the only real way out. People always ask, but can't they go to therapy?
Right, everyone wants to fix them.
Can't we fix them? If I just find the right therapist, can we save the relationship? Erikson outlines very clearly why standard therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy, Gestalt, schema therapy, are almost entirely futile for clinical narcissists.
Why is that? Because therapy works for so many other severe psychological issues. We treat trauma, depression, severe anxiety. Why does it fail here?
Because the foundational requirement for any therapy to work is that the patient must acknowledge they have a problem,
Right.
and they must possess a genuine internal desire to change. The true problem with treating a narcissist is that they don't want to be cured.
They don't think they're broken.
As Erikson brutally puts it, what exactly do they want to be cured of? Their ability to successfully manipulate others to get exactly what they want.
Jeez.
Their utter lack of guilt and shame, which allows them to sleep perfectly at night after destroying someone else's life.
They literally think they are at the top of the food chain.
They do.
To them, going to therapy feels like a lion being asked to go to counseling to learn how to be a vegetarian.
That's exactly it.
Why would they voluntarily give up their predatory advantage when it serves them so well in life? They don't think they are broken. They think the rest of us are pathetic and weak for being constrained by feelings like guilt and empathy.
And when you force them into therapy, or they go willingly to appease a partner, they weaponize the process.
They weaponize therapy.
This is vital to understand. They go to therapy to learn the vocabulary of healing, just to use it as a new manipulation tactic.
Oh, wow.
They learn therapy buzzwords like gaslighting, boundaries, and toxic, and they instantly turn those terms against their victims.
That is terrifying.
Suddenly, the narcissist is telling you that you are violating their boundaries when you ask them to stop lying. They turn the therapeutic space into a stage for their grandiosity, manipulating the therapist, and turning a tool for healing into an upgraded weapon for abuse. The core mechanism remains completely untouched.
So the only way to win the game is to refuse to play.
Refuse to
You
play.
have to set hard, inflexible boundaries, implement the gray rock method, and walk away to preserve your own reality and your own identity.
It is the only scientifically backed solution.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap this incredible, intense journey.
Good idea.
We started by looking at the true tragedy of Narcissus, understanding that at the core of a narcissist is a grandiose, completely unrealistic self-image, coupled with a total structural deficit of empathy. They are starving because they reject others. We busted the massive cultural myth that they have low self-esteem. The implicit association test proves that deep down, they truly believe they are superior beings, making self-esteem training incredibly dangerous.
We then tracked how they trap their victims. We saw that they don't target the weak. They actively hunt the highly empathetic and intelligent among us.
Yeah.
They use intense love bombing as a reconnaissance mission, acting like hackers pinging a system to gather intelligence on our deepest vulnerabilities so they can weaponize them later.
And we looked at the nightmare of the active relationship, the descent into the basement where you become the punching bag.
Yeah.
We examined the gaslighting, the constant devaluation, the dizzying tactic of changing the subject to keep the victim perpetually on trial for fabricated crimes.
Disorienting.
And finally, we looked at the exit strategy,
Yeah.
apathy, the gray rock method, setting ironclad boundaries, recognizing that you cannot love them into feeling empathy and you cannot therapy them into humility because they will just weaponize the treatment. You have to save yourself.
And as we conclude, this leaves us with a chilling philosophical provocation.
Okay, lay it on us.
We've spent this entire time talking about the individual narcissist and interpersonal relationships. But Erikson leaves us with a profound warning about our broader culture.
Yeah.
We are living in an era dominated by social media algorithms that literally run on a currency of likes, shares, and superficial validation.
The entire digital ecosystem is designed to reward us for acting like narcissists.
Exactly. We are heavily incentivized to present an unrealistic, grandiose, highly curated image of our lives online. We are financially and socially rewarded for constant self-promotion.
Right.
And worse, we are rewarded for lacking the empathy to engage in nuanced debate, preferring instead to publicly shame, attack, and cancel our opponents for a quick hit of social clout.
Because outrage drives engagement.
Exactly. If narcissists are individuals who demand endless external validation and throw destructive tantrums when reality doesn't match their grandiose self-image, what happens when our entire global culture adopts these exact pathological traits as the baseline prerequisite for success?
That is a terrifying thought.
If the overarching system actively rewards narcissism, how long until the entire system breaks down under the weight of its own collective ego?
Wow.
It's a profound question that we all need to sit with. It means that spotting these red flags isn't just about surviving your next bad date or navigating a toxic boss.
It's bigger than that.
It's about recognizing the psychological undercurrent of our entire modern society and actively choosing not to participate in it.
It really makes you realize that the work of cultivating genuine empathy, true humility, and healthy, non-exploitative self-esteem is actually an act of radical cultural rebellion right now.
It is the most rebellious thing you can do.
So as you walk away from this deep dive, keep your eyes open. Protect your empathy, because it is incredibly precious. And know the difference between someone who genuinely loves you and someone who is merely studying you to find the open ports in your system. We aren't just looking out for the lions in the tall grass anymore. We have to make sure we aren't starving on the riverbank, staring too long at our own reflections.